I'm thinking a bit about language lately. I'm trying to find a bit more out about language. I'm finding it difficult, to be honest, because a lot of the ideas and theories that I'm reading about language are just outside my comfort zone in terms of gaining access to them. It's just too difficult right now. But one of the things I was just thinking about, and this is purely speculative really, is to do with language and embodiment, I guess. There's this sense, I think, in which we think that, or of modern understandings of cognition particularly, kind of demand embodiment. It's a kind of refutation of good old-fashioned AI, in which you could make a machine intelligent, kind of, by inputting a set of symbols into it, and inputting a set of rules for the processing of those symbols. That idea of first-generation AI has been widely refuted, saying you can't really do that. That's not how cognition works. That's not how intelligence, as we understand it, works. It might be something else. But it's certainly nothing like human intelligence. But human intelligence demands the existence of the body. It's interactive, inactive, interrelational. It's all those kind of things that demand a kind of deeply embodied relationship to the world. So, and that's as I understand it, one of the common refutations of good old-fashioned AI, which is about symbol manipulation. But I'm just thinking of how language fits into that. Because language, it seems to me, is so embodied. It's so of the body and of experience. I mean, I don't think there's any. I certainly don't know of any languages in the world which don't have nouns and verbs, for example. Apart from fake ones, I know there are some fake kind of sci-fi languages in which there are only verbs. There are no nouns. I know that's an experiment, and I think there are certainly real languages in the world which have less nouns than others. Some more accentuate the objective, if you like, whereas others accentuate the processual and the verb. But generally, I think all languages have objects and objects which can kind of be named and be represented as nouns. So I think if you've got access to language, what seems to be going on with language is that it's a constant playing out of relationships between actions and objects and directions. I think prepositions are often directions, aren't they, really, kind of? Directions and orders in space. So there's something deeply, I think, the kind of embodied relationship of what it is to be a human being, I think, is kind of represented in language to a large extent. I mean, I'm probably completely wrong here, because what little I do know about languages, and this is not much at all, is, for example, I seem to be talking something to do with early Wittgenstein here, I think, which, as I understand it in the Tractatus, he talks about language as being like a picture. It has a kind of pictorial relationship to the world, in the same way that the picture has a pictorial relationship to the object it depicts. But I know Wittgenstein himself dismissed his early ideas, and that idea of language as a picture of the world isn't terribly popular, and I think I'm falling into that trap. If it's a trap, I don't know. But certainly I suspect that if the whole human race was wiped out, and all you had was language, and by that I don't necessarily mean the meanings of the words, you just had the structures of language, I think you could probably reconstruct quite a bit of what it was like to be a human being just from that. If you had this access to grammar and syntax, you'd probably be able to, just the fact that there are objects and subject and processes in the world, you would know that whoever uttered these sentences had these kinds of experiences. They had experiences in which there were objects. There were these things that seemed to populate their environment, and these things could be set at different removes, and and all these kind of prepositional relationships between these objects and the subjective position of the person uttering those sentences were all kind of codified into those prepositions. I don't know, maybe you could find it, maybe you could reconstruct it all from just having access to that language. Didn't sound very convincing to me, actually. Maybe you couldn't. I do think, I think the body exists in the language, though. I mean, Mark Johnson talks about the body and the mind. He talks about the way that cognition works as being ultimately, and at every single point, pinned to embodiment. And that's the key idea behind things like image schema, conceptual metaphors. That whole cognitive linguistics enterprise is built upon the idea that the body and the mind are connected, of course, but the structure of the mind maps the structure of the body, broadly speaking. And the same, I think, must be true of language. So if we didn't have access to a body because we'd all died out and all we had was some old Jimi Hendrix records, then perhaps you could reconstruct the body and the environment that that body walked around in just by the lyrics of Purple Haze, maybe.